On this episode of Rock and Roll Blueprints, Anthony Corder and Keith Douglas of Tora Tora sit down to discuss Tora Tora's debut record, Surprise Attack. Let's talk about Surprise Attack. Now that record, I'm sure you guys know, but I didn't realize that was almost 34 years ago that came out.
That's insane. Isn't that crazy?
Right? And I was thinking
Keith, have I known you that long?
It's hard to believe, man. I mean, on one hand, it seems like a million years ago. And on another hand, it just seems like we were just kind of in there experiencing it. You know, it's just wild.
It doesn't seem like that time goes that fast. I mean, if you think about it, when that album came out, if we went back 34 years, it would have been around 1955.
Oh my God.
You know?
Wow.
It's crazy.
But yeah, so that came out in 1989, went to number 47 on Billboard's 200 charts, which is pretty darn good, I would say.
It's awesome. It's awesome.
You had 3 singles off there, Walking Shoes, Guilty, and Phantom Rider, correct?
Right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay. What do you remember the first day going in to record that? Because you guys were pretty green at that time.
We were.
Yes.
You know, we had a little bit of studio experience, and you know, we've told the story a million times, but we won a Battle of the Bands contest, and we got some recording time at Ardent Studios, which, you know, was a huge deal to us. And, you know, and so of course they let us come in on like a Sunday afternoon when the studio was empty. And, you know, the guy that we worked with there, who was working his way up, you know, into the ranks there at Ardent, was Paul Ebersold. And he worked with us that first day. And I think we worked on Phantom Rider, didn't we, Anthony?
Yeah.
As a demo, just to, you know, that's what we spent our day on. And he put some piano on it, and we were all just kind of really clicking, you know.
If I did my research correctly, Phantom Rider, you guys had that, and it had some local airplay prior to the signing and the release of that record, right?
Yeah, that was before Surprise Attack. We were putting together like an EP. We had done some studio work, like Keith said. There was a guy, Steve Howe, that had been working with us. He had a powerhouse studio. It was kind of like in his backyard. And he was the first guy that talked to us about the groove, man. We walked in and everybody in the band was doing a solo. I was screaming the highest note I could hit. Keith was, you know, ripping a guitar riff. Patrick was trying to play like Geddy Lee, and John was hitting every rototom and floor time. And he said, "Hey, I just want to get y'all locked in." And we were like, he goes, "I want y'all to groove. We're going to get y'all." And we were like, "What you talking? You know, what are you talking about?" And so immediately he made an adjustment and got Patrick and John kind of going on the right place. And he got me and Keith to kind of, or at least all of us, kind of to tone down for a minute, play together. We were so excited. I mean, being in the studio and stuff was just freaking us. We didn't have all the technology everybody's got nowadays, and getting in there and being able to hear yourself, you know, we weren't at a rehearsal place and all on top of each other and everything. Jody Stevens, the drummer for Big Star, was working at Ardent, and he was the contact. He was the guy that was doing kind of the artist pitching and stuff. And so he helped us get signed to A&M. They helped us showcase. You know, we did 4 or 5 showcases, and it was pretty exciting, y'all. Man, we were just a garage band. We didn't know what was going on. We just wanted to play music. We were having a great time. We were partying a lot and having a good time. We were I was probably 17 or 18, Keith.
So yeah, you were real young when the opportunity.
We were little, you know. And John Fry, the owner of the studio, ended up becoming like a kind of a father figure to our band. He had been very successful in the music industry with his studio, and you know, they were waves down the road from us. And so they were kind of talking us through, you know, what it might look like to work with people in the industry. Really what he did, if I'm totally being honest, is he walked in a conference room with us, and he drew a dot on the wall. And he said, "This is you." And he drew a big circle around it, went, "This is everybody else that's going to be digging in your pocket." And basically, that was the conversation we were having. And we went, great. Where do we sign up? Can we go, play our music and record and everything? Man, it was an incredible learning experience. They were super talented. Joe Hardy signed on. It gave us credibility in the industry. He had a bunch of success with ZZ Top and multiple other bands. And so he kind of gives the cred in the industry where people were kind of perked up. They said, hey, what's this new thing Joe's working on? It's bunch of kids from Memphis. And Paul, like Keith said, was cutting his teeth. He was kind of making a name for himself. So he was out, hustling and grinding. And we just had a ball, man. We worked on so many, I don't know, Keith, you probably remember, we probably wrote about 60 or 70 songs for that first record.
Yeah, I was going to say, how many songs did you have going into making that record?
I don't even really remember. I mean, we had a lot of original tunes that never, once they never made Surprise Attack, we just kind of never revisited a lot of those. I mean,
you didn't do like Van Halen does and dig them back.
No. But I also, something to go along with what Anthony was saying, a big part of that Memphis music scene was this DJ Malcolm Riker, who from a station that broadcast out of West Memphis, Arkansas, and he started doing a 1-hour locals bands, music show, and it kind of helped the whole scene kind of evolve. And he played the crap out of our original version of Phantom Rider, and
how much different did the original version to what became the album version? How different was it?
I think the song was probably about the same. Was it, Anthony wrote that one. A friend of ours.
The arrangement was the same. The production was different. I mean, number one, we just had much more budget, more time. We weren't in there just, trying to get in, knock it out, and have time to mix. But we put like backing vocals and all that wasn't on it. It was much more, slicked up for the A&M version. And we had edits.
I was telling Joe before you got on, it's such a interesting vocal melody. It doesn't go.
Yeah.
The chord progression and the song leads you where you think it's going to go somewhere else. And over and over again, I remember hearing it back in the day and then listening to it again today, remembering it's just interesting where most people follow the generic stuff. You really went out on a limb with that vocal melody. I thought it was very interesting.
Yeah, it was funny going back and listening to it. I was trying to figure stuff out singing. It was a huge learning experience being in the studio and having time to mess around and stuff. I wrote that with a really good friend of mine, Thomas Howard. And I tell this story all the time. He lived in my neighborhood. He wasn't in the band, but he became like one of our insiders, one of our crew. He was around a lot, and we lived in the same neighborhood. He used to walk. He had this little black dog, Fred. He used to walk him up the street every night, and he would smoke a cigarette when he was walking the dog, and I lived in a little ranch house up the street from him, and I kicked the screen out of my window. So I would see his, the cherry of his cigarette coming up the sidewalk, and I'd go out,
Yeah.
And he was way into more progressive rock. He loved Rush and Yes. And I was more like Zeppelin and Janis Joplin stuff. So we kind of had a rub. We were always kind of bickering back and forth about music and stuff.
Sure.
And I remember sitting on the edge of the bed, strumming that chord. He was really, he was a great lyricist. Like he had just stacks of journals and poetry and all kind of stuff that he had in his room. And he said things in a way that I would never come up with it on my own. So it was fun to collaborate with him because we were really different. And I remember I would come up with melodies and music a lot of times, and then we would find some of his words. But on this one, we were just talking. I remember that intro chord, just sitting on the edge of my bed going, I wonder what this is going to be. I can remember it just like yesterday, sitting there and strumming it. And we were just talking, we would go outside and just stare at the stars and, dream, man. We were just talking about music and stuff. And we were talking about celebrating life. We were young and we were excited and we were thinking about all the things that life had in store for us and our friends and all that stuff. And we were dreaming about things. And we just started talking about how much one person impacts everybody else, that you don't realize it even. Like you're powerful. Everybody, that you talk to, is unique. Their life perspective, their life experience, their creativity, their critical thinking, and all that stuff. And it's just, we take it for granted. Sometimes we're all bustling around and stuff, but you start and think about how much one person has an impact on other people. And so that's kind of how we started that conversation. And it was pretty heavy. And but anyway, as we started putting it together and we took the music to the band, man, it was really cool. The build up part where it goes into the scream and all that stuff, and we worked all that up. Man, it was really cool to play it live. We got really excited about it, and it just got a response. Man, when we put it out on the radio, we weren't sure. We had done 2 or 3 songs by the point that one had come out. I think "Wasted Love" and "Love's a Bitch" probably had already been out on the EP, and that one came out, and it just resonated. And I remember Keith was saying this a minute ago about Malcolm Riker. I remember the A&R guy saying he knew he was going to sign us. Brian Huttenhauer from A&M had said, I knew I was going to sign you because I flew to Memphis, and when I got in my rent-a-car, I turned the radio on and your song was playing.
Right.
And we said, wow,
Yeah.
that was just,
I think he
crazy
showed up at our
timing.
warehouse for our party that night, and it was just like a complete blowout, man. It was out of control. I'm pretty amazed we never got shut down by the cops.
Yeah. Now,
As soon as he got there, he was like, yeah, we'll do this.
Right. You had multiple people help you with some of those songs on Surprise Attack, correct?
There's multiple. Yeah, we did.
Okay.
Thomas wrote quite a few of them. He wrote Hard Times and Being There and Phantom Rider. And y'all, it was funny. We talk about this in the beginning, that kind of inner circle stuff in our band. We didn't want to co-write. We were kind of resistant, to be just totally honest with y'all. We were, I think we were kind of knocking ourselves out of an opportunity at the beginning, but I think it's because we didn't have any confidence. We weren't sure what we were doing, and we kind of got protected. And A&M was trying to kind of open us up to the opportunities. And they sent a guy. I mean, we trusted Thomas because we were friends with him. That was a different relationship, but they were bringing in like outside people in our group. And I remember A&M sent a guy named Tom DeLuca down that ended up writing Guilty with us. It was just on one afternoon, and man, we were kind of little shits, just to be honest with you. He showed up and we were like, man, screw that guy. He don't know anything about us. He's never met us. He's a stranger. We weren't thinking about the collaborative part of it.
Would you have said that if they sent Desmond Child back then?
Man, no, but I don't know what we just said. I mean, we know who he is, and his name and everything would have preceded him. But I think it was just more, we were had a little bit of fear in us. We didn't want to do something that we would say something wrong, or they would figure out, maybe it was an imposter syndrome or something. We didn't know what to call it back then, but we were kind of worried, but the other 2 guys, the rhythm section, we were at the studio or whatever, and they said, hey, we're going to go next door to Molly's and get a drink or whatever. And Keith and I were talking, and we said, hey man, let's just go in there and see what the guys, he seems nice. Let's just go in there and talk to him and tell him maybe it's not going to work or whatever. But as soon as we got in there with him, this guy was super amazing. I mean, he was super talented. He just, and all of a sudden it made you realize, and I tell kids this all the time now when I'm talking to them, is collaborating with people is so powerful, because you start seeing their process, the protocol of writing and all that kind of stuff. We weren't really there mentally for all that. We just said, hey, there's this outside person kind of intruding into our Tora Tora world, all of a sudden. But all of a sudden, by the end of that afternoon, we were like, hey, we have something kind of cool.
Mm-hmm. Were you playing Walking Shoes live before the album came out? Was it a local hit? Was it, what did it?
Mm-mm. I don't think so, Keith. We didn't. We might have had it right before the record came out, but it was really late in the process. It was like right at the deadline almost.
Did you guys want it to be the single?
I think once we wrote that one, and it, man, as far as I remember, that was one of those that we wrote really quick, like super fast, sitting at an apartment I lived in, I think, out on the patio. And it's just kind of like, as soon as we heard it, when we did a demo, we were like, yeah, this is definitely the song. I think we could all just, I remember tell, just, we all kind of knew that would be the first single as soon as we wrote it, I think.
You did. Okay.
Yeah. I feel
Yeah.
like that way anyway. I mean, I don't know if anybody else did.
It was
I
fun.
remember Keith doing that riff and just going, what is that? I was laying in the floor. I had like a pad. I was kind of scribbling around trying to think of some lyrics or something. And he started playing it. And we were like, what is that? What is this thing you got going on? And it was interesting. And it was really different than anything else on the record. And we said, wow, this one feels kind of cool because it's got like, it had the Memphis flavor to it, you know?
It's funny when I was listening to it today, I was thinking about obviously that opening acoustic thing was much more, the word I would say is authentic to a Southern blues thing. A lot of the scene was moving to kind of have some of that Southern blues influence in it. I don't know if you guys know I play in a band with Eric Brittingham from Cinderella, and
Oh yeah.
And Eric Long Cold Winter record went real, the first Cinderella record was a metal record, and then it went straight to that kind of blues influence stuff. But a lot of bands that started to do that, there wasn't what I considered authenticity to it. I'm from Virginia, so I'm kind of a Southern boy myself too. And you guys know you can smell a fake. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? And when I was listening to it today, that opening acoustic riff felt so authentic. And I was curious because then when it kicked in and it had a kind of a Skid Row feel to it, which that first Skid Row record was an amazing record. I mean, it was breaking. So I listened to that song today with a completely new appreciation. I was a fan of it when it came out. I loved it, but as all these years later, as a songwriter and a music producer myself, I heard it different today, and just hearing that the Southern authenticity to that riff, and then kicking in and still having the commercial metal sound to it too. I thought it was a great meld, and maybe I didn't appreciate it all those years ago the way I do today. It was neat to hear it today like that.
Right. Well, thanks. That's a huge compliment. First of all, I appreciate it.
Speaking of listening to it now and hearing it differently, do you guys listen to the Surprise Attack now and hear it differently than when you recorded it? Like, is there things that you say, well, why did we do it this way? Or,
man,
or do you not listen to it now?
I have very honestly, very, 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 very rarely listened to our music. After we get finished, I listen to it a lot while we're working on it, And honestly, if I go back and hear something now, it's for a reason to go back and listen to a solo or something like that. But, it wasn't my favorite Tora Tora record, sound wise.
What was your favorite one?
Wild America by a mile. Just as a whole, sonically, I just thought it sounded really amazing. But the first record was just different. I mean, it was just our first experience. It was, I think, we had Paul Ebersold and Joe Hardy. I think they were trying to figure out what to do with us. Seems it's the most experimental thing I think we ever did, just as far as, because a lot of stuff that, they would say, well, we have this idea for the middle of hard times, and there's this weird pumping organ Fairlight sounding machine thing, and we're just like, well, that sounds like a horrible idea, but okay.
When I was making my very first record, I was making a record in Paramus, New Jersey, with a guy named Richard Goddard. I don't know if you guys know him. He produced my first record. Him and Seymour Steins owned Sire Records, and he was the guy responsible for Blondie and the Go-Go's.
Oh, wow.
Wow.
And we were making my first record, and he sent the whole band out. He said he made us go to lunch or whatever, and he put a keyboard track on one of our songs, and then he brought us back, and he didn't want the resistance, because we were a lot like you were talking about. We didn't like we were our gang, and we didn't want the outsider, even though he was this platinum selling producer. It was our songs, and he knew that about us, so he sent us away, and he brought us in, and he played the track, and I loved it. I knew it was great. I knew that adding the keyboard was the right thing to do. Did anything like that happen to you guys? Was there any kind of Was there anything you resisted or didn't want? Did the record come out the way you wanted it to? Better, worse? Is there any moment on the record that you hate, or is there any moment that you go, that is way better than I dreamed it would ever been?
Keith, you
Go
want to go
ahead.
first, or
I I'll let you answer that one. I would have to think for a while, man. That's a lot.
yeah,
We questioned everything.
Yeah.
I
I can
think that's
remember.
what I was fixing to say. Is we were kind of second guessing. I don't even think it's second guessing. I think what Keith said a minute ago really nailed it. We were experimenting because we weren't sure exactly what we were looking for, and we had never had any kind of experience like that before. I mean, we did so many amps. Keith did so many different amps. John did different drum sets. And the one thing that was crazy about this Surprise Attack record was we did those songs were in different periods of time. It wasn't like we went in and blocked the studio out for 8 weeks
Sure.
and then came out with a finished product. We did that record over a year, and we kind of did it like, I live in Nashville. I've been up there for about 18 years, and I've been working in the, for labels and music publishing and all kind of stuff. And to me, it was like doing demo sessions in Nashville. We would go in with 4 or 5 songs, and we would cut them, and we did them really quick and dirty. Like we would actually go in there, like after a session was over or something, we would just run in, set our shit up really fast, and go and mic everything and go, all right, let's just get it down and let's listen and see what we think. And that was one of the things about being an Ardent that was cool, is we could just kind of shoot in there. But we get 4 or 5 of them. And of those 4 or 5, there would be one that we go, okay, man, now we got to beat that one. The whole next writing sessions that we're doing. And we did that in waves. So sometimes it would be 4 songs, sometimes it'd be 7 songs. Sometimes it might be just one song that we just go, we're so excited. Let's run in here the very first opportunity we get. So all those were kind of at different periods of time. Like we said, Walking Shoes was way late. We had, Love's a Bitch at the very beginning. We went in, Love's a Bitch, Dancing with a Gypsy, Phantom Rider. And there was one other one that was the shopping tapes, that we went out to shop.
Like Riverside Drive, I think.
Riverside Drive, that was it. And so we had those 4, and then from those 4, we grew into those 10 that we had, and we kept adding and taking and moving. And y'all know how it is too, with when y'all are listening to records now, when y'all are asking if you listen and stuff, the sequencing of the record, like sometimes we'd say, man, we're really mid heavy. Let's get away from that. We need something up tempo.
Yeah,
or,
right.
Or we got too many ballads, or we don't have the right ballad yet. You're thinking all this stuff. And when Keith said we had listened and listened and listened, I mean, we had run that freaking thing in the ground. I mean, we just went because we wanted to try to get the best we can. When you said, is there stuff on it that you don't like? I think they did amazing for the place we were as musicians and stuff. I mean, I remember hearing some of the first things that they showed us, and I just went, oh my God, is this us? This sounds amazing.
Yeah.
The
That's a
things
great
that they had
feeling
done.
when you're young. When you're young,
Yeah,
and you hear your first record sound like a record instead of a
yeah,
demo.
and the vocals that they did, the Keith's guitars, he had tried all kind of different guitars and stuff. I mean, for me, stylistically, I did realize that I had a lot of growing to do in those records. And when I listen back now, I was in a place where I never heard myself in the studio and stuff like that. And so it was very freeing, and I had a lot of control and stuff. But when I went out to tour on that record, I had sang every song at the top of my register, like those 10 songs. And those were the only 10 songs I had. So every night it was like, you're going to go out there and you got to hit these notes every night. So I was real strategic on Wild America. I said, I'm gonna start using that. So I think, like, dynamic wise, even what you said about Phantom Rider, the beginning note of that song, I'm like way up in my register on that beginning. And it was just, that's how I sang it. That's where I was when I was thinking. But when I think about it now, I was like, man, I would have saved that. I would have started the song out much low key and moving. Yeah. And I kind of do now that I'm older, and we're singing it and playing it a little bit different. Just so the dynamic is there and you don't kind of give it away right out of the gate, Yeah. So I think it was more kind of like a learning process for us, because when Keith said he loved Wild America, I know this is a story about Surprise Attack, but just those two compared, where we had so much playing experience by the time we got to that second record.
Sure.
Yeah. We were a totally different group of people, because everybody had gotten better at their instruments, and we had been exposed to a lot of other people. We were super hyper focused on ourselves. And then we went out and toured. We saw people, we played shows, we listened to a bunch of different records. when you
Yeah.
said Skid Row and all those people, we were freaking out on all those records too. We were like, oh my God, these people are killing it. And so we had a much more kind of strategic plan when we went in for Wild America, because we had just had educated ourselves some. But the whole experience, getting back to Surprise Attack, was amazing, because it was such a learning experience. The experimenting with your guitar sounds, John messing around with his drums. You know, when you said, was there a battle? There was a point in time, and John said this in another podcast recently, and it was so weird, y'all. Just talking to y'all on this thing, it reminded me of it a second ago. All of us in the band have different perspectives of what happened. It's so funny, because I heard John on his podcast and how stressed out he was on the first record, because he was playing to a click, you know, and he had to learn to click, and he didn't like it at first. He fought it. He was like, God, I hate this freaking thing.
But he got to
I
do it,
remember
right? Because a lot of times drummers are pushed to the side, and the producer brings in a guy.
You know, we were pretty close to that. I don't think we were pretty close to that, but I know that, you know, once they started talking to him about that, you know, he learned to play with a click track really fast.
You know,
you know, kind of against our will, but we were all kind of learning the same.
Yeah.
The same
That's
thing.
what got me so. That's what got me so tickled when I saw that. I was so focused on myself. I was like trying to keep up with what they were all doing. Like, just as far as the song itself being in there, because we'd be in there at separate times. But John telling his perspective was like, man, you know, this is my gig. This is my record. This is my group of guys. I'm not going anywhere. Whatever I got to do to get it done, that I'm playing on here. And they're like, to play on the record, you're going to have to get on this click. And I remember being in takes with him, and he would be playing, and he would just stand up and like knock his cymbals over and throw his sticks. And we'd go, oh my God, what is wrong? And then
was that the first time he's played with one?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was the first time he had played with one. And man, you would go put his headphones on, and it was a freaking cowbell on like 10, just going,
that's right,
in his head. And I was like, well, no wonder he's freaking jumping up.
You have to do it that way. You have to do it. You know,
but I will say this. Once he got on it, he didn't want to be without it. And he used it with us live, because he would say, y'all's adrenaline, you get so excited, man. When we run out on that first song, you're like 10 clicks faster than, I mean, our set's going to be like 15 minutes. Y'all are like, you know, just, we're so pumped up and excited. So he would rein us in. He'd wear it for the first, you know, couple of clicks of the song, knock his thing off. And then, you know, I mean, I think through that process, though, we were all, what Keith said, trying to figure our individual parts out. So it was challenging, but it was really fun at the same time. The people we were working with made it fun. It was kind of nerve-wracking. It was a lot of pressure, because we were spending a lot of money. You know, we were thinking about in there that this was taking a long time. And the record company we had brought in songs, and they would say, no, that one's not going to make it. And so there was, you know, they turn into these conversations like it starts kind of being personal. You're like, dang, man, I really worked a long time on that song, and it got shot down in 30 seconds.
You got to have skin on that stuff, man.
Yeah, it's not personal. It's just, that's just business, and they're thinking of the best way that they can market you and all that. But we didn't know that when you're a little kid. You kind of it kind of hurts your feelings, you know.
Oh yeah, and it's crushing when you think you've got a hit song and they don't beat around the bush. Nope, this song sucks.
Yeah,
great.
Yeah.
Keith, how about your guitars at the time? I mean, were your guitars spot on, or did you need some help with those? Or because I know a lot of times people will come in and do the leads for different people, and you know.
No, I mean, you know, we experimented with a lot of different stuff. You know, there was a music store down the street. We rented different guitars, you know, Kramer's with whammy bars, and just, you know, we were just doing
I have to ask, because again, listening through it all today, and you were talking about all the different amps and stuff you used, and I swear that I hear the old ADA MP1 in there. Did you use that at all?
Probably.
Some of the clean channel stuff. There's I forget which song it was, but it has this kind of clean channel during the verses. And I wanted to ask, I mean, everyone in the world had that thing at that era in life. You know what I mean?
You know, I toured with that for that whole album, but I can't remember if we had it in the studio or not.
Yeah.
I'm not sure, but
I think you did, Keith, because I think you saved some of those settings from the studio.
Maybe so. Maybe so. That's a
Yeah.
good
I
ear,
mean,
though. Good ear.
Yeah, it's a game
Yeah.
changer. Well, to be there was this one track. And forgive me for not remembering which one it was, but the production, not the song, production had a very White Lion feel to the verse.
Yeah.
And it was the clean guitar sound. It didn't sound like a White Lion song. And I just remember going, that has to be that, because that's what Vito Bratta used, was that
Right. Well, that's why I ended up with it.
Oh,
So
right.
I had it afterwards because we had the same management as White Lion.
Oh, right on.
Yeah, we sure did.
And they were, that's so, maybe I didn't have it in the studio. I don't know. But
Yeah.
anyway, I don't know. With the guitars though, I don't know. I overplayed so much stuff, man. I go,
You think so?
just too much, man. Too many notes.
I didn't feel that when I listened to it today. I get what you're saying as an adult and who as a grown guitar player, but when I listened to that record today, it was spot on with what was your competition back then. It was everything that Skid Row record was, or the Dangerous Toys record, or anything like that was. I thought your playing and your vocals were spectacular on it. It was wonderful to listen to it again today.
Oh, well, cool. That's good to
Thank
know.
you for
I mean,
saying that.
I'm all, just like everybody's always like super duper critical of your own
Sure, I
stuff.
get it.
And I honestly, I have no idea what it sounds like.
Yeah.
I don't know the last time I listened to Surprise Attack, but whenever I just have a hard time listening to anything.
Yeah. It's interesting to me that I'm a giant Van Halen fan, and I have a Van Halen tattoo on my arm. I live and die for it, and I always have. But when I was when I was a kid and heard Walking Shoes the first time, I remember thinking there was a Van Halen influence. And when I listened to the record today, interestingly enough, I couldn't pinpoint what I thought was any influence. I don't know. I would not be able to tell you who your influences were in your music. I would be curious if you guys told us that.
It's guitar wise.
Anything. Yeah.
Man, well, of course, Van Halen. I mean, just all the normal stuff, man. Van Halen and Ozzy.
Yeah,
Randy
sure.
Rhoads, man. I love Randy Rhoads.
Yeah, but you didn't sound like you were copying
I
any
know.
of that stuff.
I mean, because I can't play any of that shit. I still can't. I never could.
But Keith, you were more of a metal guy, weren't you?
Yeah.
Okay.
In the band before Tora Tora, it was our same drummer, John Patterson. We were in a heavy metal band called Lycanthrope.
Mm-hmm.
And we were four, head banging dudes that lived together in a duplex, and hilarity ensued.
Yeah.
I guess. But yeah, that's kind of was kind of like our magical mixture. I kind of brought the crunch, and Anthony's
right
more on the ballady side. It's just it kind of worked out well, mixed well.
It worked well for a great album, great debut album.
So, but yeah, I mean, just all the other normal influences. I'll tell you a killer guitar player that I still love that nobody ever talks about is Mick Jones from Foreigner.
Oh, he's great. He's great.
And
me and Brett actually tried to get him to produce one of our records about 10 years ago, and he didn't want
really.
He told us no, it wasn't his thing.
Really?
Yeah. He did something with Poison years ago. And so Brett called him about something, and he wasn't interested.
Oh, well.
Yeah.
What about the sequencing of the album? You mentioned that earlier about sequencing. Did you guys have a lot of input in that?
I think the record company was doing it, management was doing it. We were coming up with ideas. There was, I don't even know. There was all kind of different arrangements of songs. And there was a couple of them that were floating in and out that we kept going, is it going to make it? Is it not going to make it? Is it going to be a bonus track? Is it going to be go to Japan? Is it? I think we thought about that quite a lot. The way that all these songs kind of fit together. And it was weird too, like I was saying earlier, because we kind of Frankensteined record together. We were kind of doing them at different time periods, and so that would change the sequence every time we would approve or get an approval for another to add one. But yeah, I think those first couple of songs, "Love's a Bitch" and stuff, those were early songs. I think that we knew those were going to be ones that they were kind of leading off the pack. That was early in the recording process and all that. So they were there.
Right.
Yeah, I think it's pretty spot on. I mean, it's got a nice flow to it.
Yeah, it
Yeah,
was.
and
I can't even really remember the sequencing part of it, but I just had a thought of a crazy thing, an experience I had in there. I was by myself in the studio with Joe Hardy, doing solos, maybe to Love's a Bitch or something like that. And Billy Gibbons walked in.
Ah,
Like while I was trying to cut a guitar solo, man. And I
Nice.
was a kid. So that was
Yeah.
weird. I probably still had his picture on my wall.
Yeah.
I was a kid.
Yeah.
It was just a wild, just that whole experience was a mind blower for us.
Sure.
I think.
How about when okay, so when you're done the record and then when you finally got it in your hands, I mean, your first record getting released, that had to be an amazing feeling for you.
It was. I remember seeing the artwork and stuff for the first time, and we were just like over the moon. We were so excited and thought that looked so cool.
Nothing like buying your own record in a record store. There's nothing like that first time you do that.
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah, pretty amazing.
yeah, that was crazy. And hearing it on the radio the first time, seeing the video for Walking She's on Headbangers Ball. I mean, we watched that every weekend. We couldn't believe it. And then,
Yeah.
one weekend you look up and it's like, holy crap, they're playing our video. This is crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was the whole thing. I mean, now that I've started talking about the recording stuff, I'm getting all these crazy. I'm thinking about stuff. That Fairlight machine that was there, that was probably 80 or $100,000 keyboard that
Yeah.
when it came out. I remember going in and Joe had a file, a wave on the thing, and I was like, "Hey, what are you doing?" I'd walked in from having a drink next door or something, and I go, "Hey, what are you doing?" And he goes, "Oh, I'm tuning your vocal." And I was like, "What? You're tuning?" And he goes, "Yeah, watch. I can take this little note right here." And he goes, "Just watch me with this. I'm gonna just pitch you right in." And now comparatively to what we have now, it's nothing. But back then, that was a huge deal. That they
Yeah.
would just say, "Hey, we want to fix this scream or something that rando part of the song." But they really worked on the record with us. When y'all were saying, I'm very proud of that record, both of those records, Wild America and Surprise Attack. They were patient with us, and we were trying to figure out our songwriting, everything that y'all were talking about earlier in the conversation. It was just a big step. It was so fun though, y'all. I mean, we had like the time of our life. It was so fun. And we kept getting excited the closer we were getting. When that artwork came in, they came up with the nose art thing. That got a ton of press for us, man. And I mean, we looked, one of our promotions was we were looking for the girl on the front of our record. We would announce it at the radio station and say, "If you look like this girl, show up at the radio station." And so they would, and then all the guys would show up because they wanted to see who the girls were that were lining up. So we had a lot of success going across the country. The promotion people came up with things, to link into it. And I remember it being on Entertainment Tonight. We had some kind of promotional pin that went with the album cover that when you turned it upside down, the towel fell off. And I remember them doing that on like Entertainment Tonight and stuff. We were like seeing it going, "Oh my God, they're talking about our band on the artwork of our, new single or whatever that's coming out."
Yeah.
But man, it was such a cool experience getting it and then just getting to go out and play those songs. I mean, we were laughing before about me singing so high, and that was the only 10 songs we had. But man, we wore that out. We toured for 2 years on that record.
Yeah, right.
I mean, we just stayed out, and we told A&M we had never toured before. So it was our first time to take off as a band. We took the 4 guys in the band. We took 3 of our best friends as our crew. and it was like a little group of Vikings. We tore
Fun
out in a
times.
15 passenger van, and the A&R guy rode with us from Memphis to Manhattan. He said, I want to see your face the first time you see the lights of Manhattan. And I don't even know if we stopped. I don't even know if we stopped. I think we just put the gas on and drove 20 hours because we were like, we're going to New York. I mean, we had a
Right.
car, everybody's packed in there, and we were just like on a mission, you know?
Right.
And it was just so cool to share it with everybody, those four, and for it to still be us four doing it together, you know,
That's
we don't
amazing.
take that for
Yeah. I mean,
granted.
that doesn't happen much now. Same
Yeah.
4 guys.
Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
we all went to high school together, you know, and we've raised our kids. We kind of pull back. We've always been kind of family oriented and family first. And
Sure.
we all needed to kind of pull back at different times. But, you know, that record was just so fun. I think it was just such a growing experience for all of us, man. You learned a lot about yourself. You learned a lot about other people, you know, and working together and trying to do something together. And, you know, everybody's got their little quirky things that they do and all that kind of stuff. And you had, you know, figure out how to make things work, you know?
Yep.
Yeah.
And then you just gel, you know, all of a sudden when all that stuff comes together and you get something really great that you like and that's really good, and you just go, wow, we did it, man. We kind of all powered into this thing.
Yeah. Well, it was great. It's great. And it's great that you're still doing it all. It's great.
Guys, I appreciate it. Thank you so much for talking about Surprise Attack.
Yeah.
Hey man, thank y'all for giving us a platform and people to talk to. We just appreciate y'all letting us come on here, and we definitely want to stay in touch with you guys.
Yeah,
Please.
of course.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
All right,
And
guys.
thank you so much for having us. And thank you for having Surprise Attack as your very first album that you wanted to talk about on your new
Yes,
show.
sir.
Right on.
We appreciate it.
Great, guys. Thank you.